I've always been the type of person who camps alone. I know that sounds reckless to some people, but I grew up hiking with my dad, and honestly, the woods always felt safer to me than the city. But after what happened last September in the Pinelands of New Jersey, I don't think I'll ever pitch a tent by myself again. It was a Thursday night, midweek, so the trails were dead. I'd hiked about 6 miles into a section of the forest where cell service drops to nothing. The silence out there is different than regular silence. It's thick, almost like the trees absorb sound. I set up camp near a clearing, got my fire going, and made some instant ramen. The only sounds were the crackling of the wood and the occasional rustle of leaves. Normal stuff. Around 10 p.m., I started hearing something else. A low, rhythmic sound. At first, I thought it was my own heartbeat in my ears, but then I realized it was drums. Faint, but steady, like someone beating on a hollow log. I brushed it off as just another camper, maybe a quarter-mile away. Sound travels weird in the woods at night. I went back to poking at my fire, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in my gut, but the drumming didn't stop. It went on for 20 minutes, then 30, always the same rhythm, never getting closer, never getting farther. That's when I noticed the smell. Smoke, but not from my fire. This was different, heavier, almost greasy, like someone was burning wet wood or something else. I stood up and scanned the tree line with my flashlight. Nothing, just darkness and the skeletal shapes of pine trees swaying slightly in the wind. Then the drumming stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I stood there frozen, listening so hard my ears started ringing. And that's when I saw it. About 50 yards into the woods between 2 trees, a flicker of orange light. Another campfire. But here's the thing. I hadn't seen anyone on the trail. No cars at the trailhead but mine, no other tents, no voices, and that fire hadn't been there an hour ago when I'd walked the perimeter of my camp. I stared at it for a long time. The flames didn't move like a normal fire. They were too still, too uniform, like a photograph. And there was a shape next to it, a silhouette, sitting, completely motionless, facing my direction. My brain kept trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was a trick of the shadows. Maybe someone had hiked in from a different trail. But my gut was screaming at me to pack up and leave. I didn't. I don't know why. Pride, maybe? Stubbornness? Instead, I turned off my flashlight and crouched low, watching. The figure didn't move. Not for 5 minutes, not for 10. It just sat there, upright, perfectly still like a statue. And then slowly, it stood up. Tall, way too tall, and it started walking, not toward me, parallel to my camp. It moved behind the trees, and I lost sight of it. That's when I heard the footsteps, crunching through dead leaves, circling, getting closer to my tent. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. I grabbed my knife, just a little folding blade, nothing that would help against a person, and tried to steady my breathing. The footsteps stopped, right outside the glow of my campfire. I couldn't see anyone, but I could feel them, watching, waiting. I don't know how long I sat there gripping that knife, every muscle in my body tensed. It felt like hours. Eventually, I heard the footsteps again, this time moving away, back toward the woods. I waited until the sun started rising before I moved. I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink. When I finally packed up at first light, I went to check where that other fire had been. I had to know. I pushed through the brush, counting my steps, 50 yards, just like I had estimated, and I found it. A circle of stones, charred wood in the center, and surrounding it, driven into the ground in a perfect ring, were dozens of sticks, sharpened, pointed inward, like something was meant to be kept inside, or kept out. I reported it to the ranger station when I got back to my car. They said they'd send someone to check it out, but I could tell from the guy's tone that he thought I was just another paranoid camper. Maybe I am, but I'm also never going back to those woods. To whoever was drumming that night, watching me from the trees, let's not meet again. I'm a trail runner. I do about 15 miles a week on this loop near my house in Washington State. Dense forest, barely maintained, mostly locals who know about it. It's usually deserted, which is exactly why I like it. But 3 months ago, I had an experience that made me rethink running alone. Hell, it made me rethink a lot of things. It was early November, around 4 p.m., so the sun was already starting to dip. I was about halfway through my usual route when I saw him. A guy, maybe in his 40s, standing off the side of the trail. Not hiking, not resting, just standing, hands in his pockets, staring at the ground. I gave him a polite nod as I passed. He didn't acknowledge me, didn't even look up. Weird, but not unheard of. People zone out. I kept running. About a mile later, I saw him again. Same guy, same posture, hands in pockets, staring down. But this time, he was ahead of me on the trail, and I hadn't passed anyone. There's only one path through that section, no shortcuts, no alternate routes. I slowed to a walk, my stomach twisting. I pulled out my phone, but of course, no service. I turned around and started heading back the way I came, moving fast. My sneakers slapped against the wet leaves, my breath coming out in short bursts. That's when I noticed the footsteps behind me, steady, matching my pace. Not running, just walking. But every time I sped up, the footsteps sped up. Every time I slowed down, they slowed down. I didn't want to look. I don't know why. Maybe some primal part of my brain thought if I didn't acknowledge him, he'd disappear. But I could feel him back there, close. I broke into a sprint. My lungs burned. Branches whipped across my face. I didn't stop until I hit the trailhead parking lot. My car was the only one there. I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking, threw myself inside and locked the doors. And then I saw him, emerging from the trail, slowly, still with his hands in his pockets. He stopped at the edge of the lot, maybe 20 feet from my car, and just stood there, staring. Not at me, through me. His face was blank, expressionless, like a mannequin. I started the engine and peeled out of there, gravel spraying. I watched him in my rearview mirror the whole time. He didn't move, didn't wave, didn't react, just stood there until I rounded the corner and lost sight of him. I thought that was the end of it, a creepy encounter, a story to tell. But when I got home and pulled into my driveway, my stomach dropped. He was there, standing at the edge of my yard. Same guy, same blank expression, same hands in his pockets. I didn't get out of the car. I just sat there, engine running, staring at him through the windshield. He stared back for minutes. Neither of us moving. I finally called 911, voice shaking, trying to explain. They said they'd send someone. By the time the cops arrived 10 minutes later, he was gone. They searched the area. Nothing. No footprints in the soft dirt, no signs anyone had been there. They took my statement, told me to call if he showed up again, and left. But I found something the next morning, on my porch. A small pile of stones stacked in a cairn, balanced perfectly. And next to it, pressed into the wood, a smudge of dirt, shaped like a handprint. I moved 2 weeks later. I don't run that trail anymore. I don't run any trails anymore. To the man who followed me home, let's not meet again. I used to work as a wildlife surveyor. Basically, I'd hike into remote sections of national forest, set up trail cameras, collect data, solo work, quiet work. I loved it. Past tense. Because last April, I heard something in the woods that I still can't explain, and it made me quit the job entirely. I was in the Monongahela National Forest in West Virginia, about 8 miles from the nearest road. It was my third night camped in the same spot, and I was getting ready to hike out the next morning. The area was still. No wind, no animal sounds, just that oppressive quiet you only get deep in old-growth forest. I was sitting by my tent, logging data on my laptop, when I heard it. A voice, distant but clear, calling my name. Emily. I froze. My name, my actual name, not a generic hey or hello, my name. I looked around, heart pounding. Nothing. No lights, no movement. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe another surveyor? But I was the only one assigned to this sector. Maybe a hiker who'd seen my name on my gear. But it was 11 p.m. and no one hikes out here at night. I called out, "Hello?" My voice sounded small, swallowed by the trees. No response, just silence. I went back to my work, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Exhaustion, isolation, the mind plays tricks. 10 minutes later, I heard it again, closer this time. "Emily, come here." It was a woman's voice, soft, almost sweet, but there was something wrong with it. The cadence was off, like someone imitating human speech, but not quite getting it right. I grabbed my flashlight and scanned the tree line. Nothing. My beam cut through the darkness, illuminating tree trunks and underbrush, but no person, no eyes reflecting back. "Who's there?" I shouted, louder this time. My voice cracked, and then the voice answered, right behind my tent. "Emily, I need help." I spun around. My tent was between me and the voice. I couldn't see what was on the other side. My whole body locked up. Every instinct told me not to look, but I had to know. I crept around the side of my tent, flashlight raised like a weapon. There was no one there, but the ground was disturbed, fresh footprints, bare feet, leading to my tent, stopping inches from the fabric. And then, nothing. They just stopped. No trail leading away. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with my back against a tree, knife in one hand, flashlight in the other, watching the woods, waiting. The voice didn't call again, but I heard movement, circling my camp, slow, deliberate steps crunching through leaves. It went on for hours, around and around, never stopping, never coming closer, just circling. When dawn finally broke, I packed up faster than I've ever moved in my life. I practically ran the 8 miles back to my car, didn't stop once. When I got there, I found something tucked under my windshield wiper. A note, written on a torn piece of birch bark. In shaky, childlike handwriting, it said, "Thank you for staying." I reported everything to my supervisor. They sent a team out to investigate. They found my campsite, the footprints, the disturbed ground, but no evidence of another person, no sign anyone had been there but me. I turned in my resignation the same day. I still don't know what called my name that night. I don't know what was circling my tent, and I don't know what I was being thanked for. But I do know this: I'll never camp alone again, and I'll never go back to those woods. To whatever was out there, calling my name in the dark, let's not meet again.